Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to show you the proper way to bleed your disc brake system. This is Costantino Garage. Okay, so to properly bleed your disc brake system, you could do it one of two ways. One, which is the manual way, which takes very minimal tools. The only problem is you need a lot of help doing it. In order to do it manually, you'll first need Pedro to keep an eye on the fluid in the reservoir to make sure you don't run out.
Hey Holmes, it look like you still got fluid in there.
Then you'll need another guy named Spicoli to be in the driver's seat to pump the brake pedal.
Yeah, man, I like pumping the brakes real long time. He's just not doing anything. He's not stopping.
Then of course, there'll be a guy like me by the caliper with my line wrench to let the air out and then tighten it back up just to redo the entire process all over again. All right, Spicoli, keep pumping.
Yeah, wait. Did he say keep pumping or stop? I don't know, Holmes. I was just looking at the fluid.
So that's method number one. Manual brake bleeding. You need 3 different guys. Takes a lot of time and sometimes it's not very effective. Now the second way is called pneumatic bleed. Now pneumatic bleeding is helped with an air compressor that is actually pulling fluid from the caliper, not using the master cylinder to force fluid through. You're instead pulling it through from the other end. Let me show you what you'll need. So for this job, you'll obviously need brake fluid, the correct fluid. We're using .4 for our system. The hose for the pneumatic system. Now this pneumatic brake bleeder, you can get a real cheap one from Harbor Freight or any auto store for less than 50 bucks. And trust me, it's worth it. And of course, you're gonna need some sort of air compressor. Now I'm gonna show you that even the smallest of air compressors can still get this job done because you don't need a whole lot of pressure and a whole lot of volume of air to power this pneumatic bleeder. The car that we're bleeding is not 100% together. Obviously, this is a full build. It's a 1937 Oldsmobile Coupe. If you want to see the progress of this build, take a look at my earlier videos to check out the build. It is fully equipped with drilled slotted 4-piston front and back with a Wilwood master cylinder. Now, whether you are installing a brand new system like this or just replacing a brake caliper, this would be a great guide to show you how to bleed your system. Now, obviously, once you have all the supplies together, where you want to start, filling up the brake master cylinder with fluid, keeping the cap open, and just keeping an eye on because the fluid will start dropping once you start the bleeding process. Secondly, you're gonna wanna bleed from the furthest point of the car if it's a new system. So the furthest point of the car is obviously the rear passenger side. If you're just replacing a brake caliper, obviously you're just gonna bleed that brake caliper. Let's get started. First step is to remove the master brake cylinder cover to access the reservoir to put fluid in it. Obviously, this is below the floorboard in this build. Standard location for the master cylinder is against the firewall underneath the hood of your car. Usually there's just a snap cover or there's a metal ring that you have to just pop off. Cover's off. Now you have access to the reservoir. Let's fill it up with fluid. We got the brake master cylinder filled with fluid. Now let's get to the passenger rear brake caliper. This is the rear brake setup. It's a 4-piston caliper, which means there's 2 pistons on this side and 2 pistons on the other side. Let's see a better view here. It's pistons. Now on a standard brake caliper, there's usually only 1 bleed screw and it'll be on the top. However, this is 4 pistons, so there's 1 here and there's 1 here. Now, on these particular ones, there's bleed screws on the bottom as well because these calipers can be set up in either orientation. They can be in the rear or the front, which will then rotate the caliper, which will then make the bottom screws on the top. So with that being said, you only bleed the screws that are on top because this is obviously where the air is gonna sit. There's not gonna be any air down here. So you only bleed the top screws. No matter what caliper you run, that logic goes throughout all brake caliper bleeding. No matter if it's Wilwood, Bear, factory, bleed the top. That's it. All this is hooked up. We got the air going into the bleeder. We got the line coming off the bleeder with this little rubber hose, which actually just presses on and snaps on fairly tight, which is just enough. It's just going over that top nipple. And then what you do is you crack that little nut loose. And when you crack that loose, before we crack that loose, we're gonna turn this air on. And once you crack this loose, you're gonna start seeing air bubbles and fluid coming through. And you basically keep the air going, keep it pulling until you don't see any more air in the line. Then you close this off first, then shut off the air. Tighten this nut while you're still pulling fluid. Then you could go ahead and shut the air off here, which is there's a valve here. Let's crack this loose and start pulling in some fluid. All right, I was able to get this line in and have my line wrench attached to it so I could break it loose while running. And there it comes. All right, you can see the air bubbles. It looks pretty solid now. Just a little bit of air. Got it. Tighten it. And do the same to the other side. Solid, like we are there. Now we could go to the driver rear and continue this process. And as you can tell, that was really quick. We were able to bleed caliper in about a couple minutes. And there it comes. Tighten it down. Okay. And just like that, the rears are good. You can see the T fitting back there. No leaks. It looks good. So now let's move on to the front. Also, you want to keep an eye on your fluid. Fluid, it's getting a little low, so we'll top it off. Crack this loose. Looks pretty solid. And just like that, you bled all 4 calipers by yourself with no mess of getting brake fluid squirting out of the bleed screw, having to wipe everything down, tighten everything up, having someone pump the brakes. None of that with a pneumatic option. I highly recommend that. Less than $50, you could do brake jobs in less than 20 minutes all by yourself. Another thing, once you're done bleeding the calipers, top off the master cylinder with the appropriate level of fluid, and also confirm that you have a firm brake pedal. Other than that, check for leaks. Nothing else is wrong. Take it for a test drive and you should be good to go. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you bleed disc brake calipers, disc brake system in general. Wilwood, factories, whatever, the options of bleeding are the same, and the theory of how to bleed the brakes are the same. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you out in your project of doing on your car on your own. So with that being said, till next time, I'll see you guys. This is Costantino Garage.